Howdy, partner. It is I. It's your boy. We back again. We back up in this piece. We doing a podcast, and today we have a very special episode. I feel like I say that for every episode. Maybe this isn't a special episode. Maybe it's just a regular ass episode. Maybe. Maybe it ain't. Maybe it's a cool episode. I think it's a cool episode. We're going to be talking about something that I've debated. I've debated this for a while now on several different occasions on the podcast and off of the podcast. Because it's an interesting topic to me, and people make a point of, I'm just going to tell you what it is, and there's a fucking title to the video, so you can tell me what it is. It's separating the art from the artist. And, I've listened to several different people tell me, hey, I'm not going to listen to this person's music no more because they just did such and such, and I don't agree with that. Or, hey, I'm not going to watch this guy's content or this person's content because they just talked about such and such, and I don't agree with it. And, you have the right to do so. Don't get me wrong. You are more than welcome to do that. But I think that there's more to it. I think that, and this is what I really hone down on whenever I debate this, because I'm on the opposite side of people saying that they are not going to participate in the art that an artist created, and they're not going to validate that art just because the artist is maybe a shitty person, and maybe not even a shitty person. Don't get me wrong. There are people that do bad things. All right, just to put it very easily. I'm not going to call, I don't like to call people shitty people. I don't like to talk bad about people, even if I don't know them, especially if I don't know them, because really you can't really understand a person's character based off of the things that they do or that have came to light, okay? I mean, yeah, you can a little bit, but you can't get the whole characterization of that person because you're only getting what is highlighted in the news or, what you've heard of. You don't usually know that person personally, especially if it's a famous person. And usually, if we're talking about these people and these specific people, artists that become famous, mainstream, or whatever the fuck, that's how you know about them. They became famous, they became mainstream, usually because of their art and what they represent. Their art I don't think a lot of people's art directly reflects them as a person, directly. Because they could be great people, but make very daunting art. Okay, there's examples of that. I don't know if I have any examples here. I made a whole list right here of artists that may or may not have did some bad things. And, I think as a person, I think we all do bad things. But I don't think that the bad things that we do disqualify the good things that we have did throughout our life. And I think that goes for everybody. And I think that the underlying message that I'm going to, end it with is going to be finding the good in everything. Because I know a lot of great people that have did terrible things in their life. I just talked to somebody the other day that they made a whole movie about them. And actually, I'm going to try to get them on the podcast. I'm not going to say their name right now, but I'm going to try to get them on the podcast. And this guy is genuinely one of the best guys that I've ever met. Seriously, genuinely. But he did some bad things. He went to prison for a very long time. He's an older gentleman. But he's did a lot of good things that canceled out the bad things, in my opinion. Just because people do bad things or they have done bad things in their life, I think that it's just a matter of those people, are they getting better? You know what I'm saying? And people are very complex. So I don't think that you should dismiss the good things that people have did. Like, does the good outweigh the bad? Maybe, maybe not. But they still did good things, and you should recognize those good things. And I think that the moral of the story is going to be, and this is just me foreshadowing what I'm about to go through right here. And I'm giving you a little bit of perspective of how I'm about to dive into this, because I think this is very important, right? There's a bunch of different artists, and they're people just like us, right? You do bad things. You have did bad things, for sure. 100%. Everybody has done shitty shit, right? There isn't a person on the planet that hasn't done a quote-unquote bad thing. And we can debate the semantics of it. Like, what is a bad thing? What do you consider a bad thing? What do I consider a bad thing, And, a bad thing, I would say it affects other people negatively. That's a bad thing, right? I think we can all agree to that. Maybe, maybe not. But that's what I'm going to consider a bad thing. And, a really bad person maybe affected a bunch of different people negatively. And their overarching goal was impacting people negatively for the most part, right? Now, I compiled a list right here of a bunch of different artists, and some of them may not be like visual artists or musicians. They are some of them. I failed to put a lot of people on here because there is a lot of artists out there, and there's a lot of people that has accomplished a lot of different things, right? A lot of famous people, and the thing with famous people is that a lot of these famous people, they get famous off of what they do, and they get famous off of their art, so to say. I consider it art, whether it's, visual or not. I'm a visual artist myself. I have all my art usually here in the background. I sell my art, I try my best to do good things. I try my best to be a good person. But you can probably look at some of the past podcasts and you can realize that maybe I said some things that maybe were bad. But that does not disqualify my art. I am still a very good artist, right? And I still make very good art. And I wish that people that disagree with me still view my art as good art, right? That's what I wish for people to do, because, as I say, I try my best to be the best person that I can possibly be, and I try my best to be a good person. But there are going to be times where I may say or do things that other people disagree with, and that's fine. If you disagree with me about something, that's okay. We have different perspectives on things. I still try my best to be a good person and try my best to be the best person that I can be. But that does not, and I may say bad things, or I may have did something that somebody considers bad. That does not disqualify my art from being art, right? That doesn't disqualify it from maybe impacting somebody positively. And that's why I made this list right here of a bunch of different artists. And as I was making this list, and whenever I was putting this podcast together, I was thinking, like, who did I leave off? And then I started thinking about a whole bunch of different names and a whole bunch of different people. And I'm like, fuck, I have left a lot of people off of this list. And, you're more than welcome to let me know who I missed, because I missed a lot of fucking people. And I kept on saying to myself, I'm going to put this podcast off for a little bit, because I would like to compile a good list of people and good things and bad things that they've done. But the list would be endless, and we would be here all fucking night if I did that. So I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and do this shit. So here we go. We're just going to jump right into it. The first person on my list, I don't know why this is the first person on my list, but it's one of the first people that came to my mind, because somebody actually made a Facebook post about this person, and it's King Von. because it was it was his birthday recently, I believe, maybe. King Von was notoriously considered a mass murderer, right? Even though he beat the cases, he beat the charges legally. It's still told on the streets that he has confirmed kills out there. He offed a bunch of people, but he's praised for like his gangsta rap and whatnot. He's a very good storyteller. Nonetheless, have you listened to King Von's music? I don't listen to King Von a lot. I have listened to King Von. I'm not gonna like go down the street bumping King Von really. He became a little bit mainstream personally, but I think that he was still a good storyteller. And this isn't just King Von. This is people like Tupac. This is people like Biggie Smalls, right? They was very good lyricists, very good story. I wouldn't consider King Von a very good lyricist. He had more or less Dr. Seuss raps for me personally. He like, at the top, then I blow up at the mop, but then up. Yeah, it was more, but the story, he had a good story. He was able to paint a picture in your head whenever you're listening to his music, and that right there is an art in itself. He was very good at putting his words together to tell you a story, and for you to understand the story and it be like a visual representation in your head. And that, I think, is very good art. But that does not mean that he did not do those bad things. He still probably robbed people. I think that he had a couple people offed. You dig what I'm saying? And that is not good. You cannot be murdering people, bruh. You know what I mean? Still a good artist. All of these people that I put on this list, great artists, right? And he's, King Von, gang activity, right? Tupac, gang activity. Biggie Smalls, gang activity. Still very good rappers, very good artists. They were able to paint you pictures. They were able to tell you stories with their lyrics. Biggie Smalls especially was a very good rhymer. He was very good lyricist. I personally think Biggie Smalls was better than Tupac, but I scale rap a little bit differently than a lot of people. Tupac was a better storyteller than Biggie. He was a very good storyteller, but all of this controversy around, around this culture of violence leads to question, was what they did good? They still were able to put out good art, right? And what they did that is considered bad, like I said, does not disqualify their art. We're moving on. Picasso. I like to put this one in here because I am a visual artist. I am a painter myself. Picasso, I do not wish to be compared to anybody. Picasso, I have been compared to Picasso before. I don't think that I'm like Picasso in any way. I do not paint like Picasso. He was a very skilled painter. And he was very, very good. He was very, very good. He was considered the most influential artist of the 21st century, or the 20th century, actually, 20 and 21st. Very good. He was, right here it says, he was known for turbulent relationships, accused of mistreating and manipulating women in his life. A womanizer. He was a known womanizer. That could be considered a bad thing. He cheated. He would go with different women to do different things, and he would lie. But I don't know if that considers him completely bad. Maybe he was a good person. He was also a communist. He was also a communist that built his whole entire wealth off of the capitalistic factors. He built his wealth from capitalism. the majority of his art was sold in America, which is capitalism. He made a fuck ton of money off of capitalism. And then he turned around and donated a lot of money to get communist people elected. I think that's a little bit hypocritical. I mean, how are you going to talk against a system that built you into what you are? How are you going to do that? How are you going to try to get certain people elected that are trying to get rid of the system that made you wealthy and made you able to do the things that you do, right? And that's just, you may disagree with me about that or not. Maybe you don't, I think that politics is a big one too. This is a huge one because, politicians get the most slack out of anybody. And, their art is politics, right? There are good politicians. Well, we're going to get dicey on this. I'm not going to get into the politics, but I think that some of the politicians out there are trying to do good things for people. And the bad things that they have, or the things that people consider bad that they have done, doesn't disqualify the good things that they've done as well. There is politicians and presidents, especially. Presidents get the most slack. Look at Trump, look at Obama, look at anybody. I don't care if you're left or right. I'm not either one. I try to stay in the middle. But all these presidents get slack of all kinds. They get the most hate out of mostly anyone, really. And I don't think that it disqualifies the good things that they have set in place to try to help people out, right? They maybe have done things that is majority bad and majority self-indulging, right? Maybe they have taken bribes or whatever, I try not to get into it. It divides people. But I think that some of them do try to do good things. And the bad things that they have done, I don't think disqualifies the good things that they have done. This is, like I said, the underlying story of this whole podcast right here is just optimism, right? I would rather look at the glass as half full than half empty any day of the week. Any day, right? Like, I would definitely say prepare for the worst, but pray for the best. Like, it's definitely good to consider the bad things that may happen, but also look at it as it's all going to work out in the end. Like, we can get something good out of this bad situation. That's an idea that I have that people should all aspire to have in common. Because then we can have more of an optimistic society. We have more of an optimistic place, right? We can look at the good in things. Stop looking at the bad in things. And we're going to get to some more. We're going to get real deep into some of this. There's Basquiat. Basquiat. He was a very good painter, right? And he died of an early age. He was a very, very good painter. And he was a very good artist in general. The last painting that sold was here recently, here in the past year. One of his paintings, his untitled paintings, sold. It was like a head, like a skull of some sort. It sold for $150 million. That's got to be some sort of inspirational piece if it's selling for $150 million. Now, manipulated in the art world, and he was he was used, really. Like, a lot of people put their politics onto him. He didn't give a fuck about the politics of everything. He just was there to create amazing art. This Basquiat is one of the guys on here, or one of the people on here that I think overall was actually he didn't do much of anything bad, He didn't really impact anybody negatively at all. If anything, he was impacted negatively. But aside from, getting very rich very fast and getting very famous very fast. He got famous really fucking fast. Not even within oh, god dang, excuse me. Not even within 5 years, this guy became very wealthy and very famous. And he struggled with drug use. He died at the age of 27, heroin overdose. He partook in heroin. Now, that's not a good example. And the thing with these famous people and famous artists is that they get to have a large amount of influence. So they influence people on a mass level. And the bad thing about that is that if they do bad things, and they're looked at in a different way. So if they do bad things, then other people will shun them more because there's more people seeing the bad things than a regular person that is not as famous or, not as known, not as influential. Right? So if old Joe Blow down the street does something bad, his mama might hear about it, and then he might get shunned from his mama. But if Basquiat did something bad, or another very famous person does something bad, then they get shunned. I mean, look at Britney Spears, right? Let's talk about Britney Spears, man. She has gotten such terrible, mental health issues, and she's fucked up in the head because of people telling her like this is the right thing to do, this is a bad thing to do, and then she's gotten to the point where she don't know what's good and what's bad. She just does whatever the fuck she wants to, and that may not be good for a person that is very influential, right? It can fuck with people's heads becoming very famous, and artists, especially in America, very famous influential artists become hooked on drugs because they have so much influence and they don't know how to control it. They don't know how, because it's so not it's not common, right? It's not common, and people don't know how to deal with it, really. They don't know how to deal with such mass influence, and a lot of people, it's not normal for a person to have fans and people screaming at you all the time, people constantly taking pictures of you, random people showing up everywhere that you're at, wanting to talk to you and shit. That's not common. And people got to deal with it in some way or fashion. And whenever you get a lot of money in a short period of time, especially whenever you're young, people don't know what to do, and then they always, a lot of times resort to drugs. A lot of these people resorted to drugs because they became very famous. And with Basquiat, I think that he had a drug problem before he got famous. I'm not really sure about that. Don't quote me on that. But he was doing heroin and having a lot of money. You can get whatever drugs that you want to, and being influential and knowing a lot of people, you can get it anytime that you want to. And then old buddy overdosed. He overdosed. He was a drug addict, okay? That does not disqualify his artwork. He still was a good artist. He was an amazing, phenomenal artist. And his art is still impacting the world today. Let's talk about Leonardo da Vinci. Right? This one's a good one because he painted the Mona Lisa. Right? Everybody knows what the fuck the Mona Lisa is. He's done a lot of crazy good shit. The Last Supper. We all know the Last Supper. Jesus and the 12 disciples sitting at the table, breaking bread together. You know what I mean? That's two of his most famous artworks, and it's two of the most famous artworks in history. Bro was really, really good at making art. He was very good. He did the Vitruvian Man or whatever it was, depicting the man in the circle, the man inside the circle with the many arms, many legs. You know what I'm saying? That's a scientific sketch that he did, and people can look at it and identify it. Mostly anybody. Anybody. Excuse the fuck out of me. I'm so fucking sorry. He was a very, 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 very famous artist to this day, and bro was around in the 1500s or when the fuck ever, 1600s. I don't fucking know. But he was around. He's probably one of the most famous artists in history. He designed early concepts for helicopters, planes. I think he was like one of the first people to come up with helicopters and planes and tanks. Bro came up with tanks. I mean, come on, bro. Like, he sketched this shit out before shit was even around, before shit was even thought of. Bro sketched this shit out. And then they used their sketches and built off of that from then, and now we have modern shit that he drew and thought of back in the day. But in 1476, he was accused of sodomy. I'll let you look up what sodomy is. Now it's kind of a vague term, right? In short, they considered bro a pedo. He had questionable relationships with young men, right? Okay. And that was, having questionable relationships with men, like sexual relationships with men back in that time, was a sin, first of all, and it was breaking the law. And that was like one of the things that was very, very looked down upon. I think that most of the government was controlled by the church at the time, like popes and shit like that. And if they found out you was gay or something, that's it. Your career is over, bro. But he was accused of it. He was never, officially acquitted of it or anything. He was never officially, I think that's the word for it. He wasn't officially, charged of it. He was just accused of it. And a lot of times if you're accused of something like that, you're done, dude. Like death penalty, shit like that, bruh. But he was just accused of it. It wasn't fully proved. He had questionable relationships with young men, and might I add that, under the legal age, right? That is not okay, bro. Whether you're gay or you're not. You dig what I'm saying? I'm not gay, but underage is still underage, bro, in the eyes of the law and morally. Might I add. That's not okay. He was accused of it. And I'm not saying that he did that shit. He was accused of. Same thing with Diddy. Diddy made a lot of shit happen. Diddy made a lot of things happen. But bro was accused of a bunch of bad shit, right? But does that disqualify the crazy shit that he did? The good shit? Like putting Biggie on? Would we have Biggie Smalls without Diddy? Did he do it? We don't know. And there is evidence though for Diddy. And he is getting charges. Bro's got charges on charges on charges. So I think that there's more evidence for Diddy than there is Leonardo da Vinci. But at the same time, bro painted the Mona Lisa. Right? Like, you gotta think about that shit. Let's see what else he did. He was also known for having a lot of projects unfinished. He would get paid to do projects, and bro would start it and not finish that shit. That would piss a lot of people off. That would piss me off if I paid somebody to do something and they started it and did not finish it, and bro just ran off with my money. It's called theft, by the way. And that would definitely, and he also did dissections and shit. Like Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin did dissections of human bodies that were, like, I think bro would go to like a morgue or some shit. Bro would go to like a cemetery, dig up dead bodies, bring them up, and then study the bodies. Bro did dissections and shit, just like Leonardo da Vinci here. And that was looked down upon. That could possibly be looked down upon. It clashes with Leonardo da Vinci. It clashed with church authorities. For Benjamin Franklin, it clashes with just people in general and maybe potentially authorities. It's still debatable if that's a good thing or not. So, like Benjamin Franklin, look at all the good shit Benjamin Franklin did. Bro was a founding father of this country. Same thing for Thomas Jefferson. founding father of this country. But I was told that he was a slave owner and he was a bad person. That's what I was told. I've always looked at Thomas Jefferson as a good person, but then I was told that and I was like, fuck, he may not be so good after all. But he did a lot of good things. He was a scholar and somewhat a gentleman. Bro wrote the Declaration of Independence whenever he was like fucking 25. I'm 25. I don't even know how to fucking write. Okay, that's not true. But I damn sure cannot write as good as Thomas Jefferson did whenever he was 25. Let's see how old Thomas Jefferson was whenever he wrote the Declaration of Independence. How old was Thomas Jefferson when he wrote the Declaration of Independence? He was 33 years old. I'm 25. I don't think in 8 years I will be able to write as good as Thomas Jefferson ever did, right? I don't think that I will ever be able to write as good as Thomas Jefferson whenever I'm any age, ever, right? Thomas Jefferson was a scholar. Slave owner, beat his slaves. That's pretty bad. That is pretty bad. But he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Let's clear that up. Coco Chanel. We all know Coco Chanel, kind of. I don't think we all do. You know, I put Coco Chanel in here because I like Coco. Well, I like Chanel, right? I'm a fashion enthusiast. I respect fashion. So, especially designer works, you know, anybody that's fashionable and in the fashion industry, I tend to be aware of a lot of that shit. And you know, I respect people that are fashionable people. I respect fashion. Coco Chanel was a very good fashion designer, right? She was revolutionary. She revolutionized women's fashion with simple, elegant designs. She found Chanel. We all know Chanel. Double C, bruh. C and reverse C. That is Chanel. We know Chanel. And, she has impacted the world greatly. You know, there's a bunch of H&M knocks off fucking Chanel a lot. There's a bunch of different designs. There's a bunch of different like lower class brands that knocks off Chanel and the designs of Chanel. And, you know, women wearing pants nowadays. Fashionable pants just in general, because it used to be women just wore dresses. Before Chanel, women only wore dresses, I believe. This is correct. Maybe I'm fucking bullshitting here. And, you know, I've watched documentaries about Chanel, Coco Chanel, and I was very intrigued by her. I once at one point wanted to be a fashion designer. And Coco Chanel it caught my eye a lot. But there's been a bunch of different things about Coco Chanel that made me question her morality. All right. Here's some controversies for you. She was accused of collaborating with the Nazis during World War II. And actually, I don't think that this is an accusation. I think that this is 100% true. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that she married a guy that was a Nazi. Right? But that's not just Coco Chanel. There was Balenciaga, Hugo Boss. I'm pretty sure Hugo Boss was the one that designed all of the Nazi uniforms, right? Christian Dior. I think that a lot of these guys they were forced to comply with, because this was Nazi-ran France, and a lot of the famous fashion designers at the time and now currently is located in France, right? You know, Christian Dior, Hugo Boss, Balenciaga. It was all in Nazi-controlled France, and they was forced to design things for the Nazis. And they complied, right? And some of them did it willingly. Okay? Some of them did it willingly. I'm not going to tell you who, and because I'm not trying to get sued or anything. But this is public known things, and Coco Chanel is not an exception to this. Coco Chanel married a Nazi, I believe, at one point. Got together with a Nazi. I don't know. And this is another controversial thing of Coco Chanel, is that she was a gold digger. Okay, just to put it very simply, she was a gold digger. She would have sexual relations with these billionaires and these millionaires to try to get money out of them so that she can accomplish the things that she wanted to accomplish. And I'm not a big fan of gold diggers, right? As a guy, if I have a fair amount of success and a fair amount of money, I'm going to be very upset if a girl is trying to manipulate me for money. Okay? And that's not just if I have a fair amount of money or success. That's just in general. If a girl is trying to manipulate me in general, I'm going to be very upset. Just like if I was trying to manipulate a girl, I would think that they're going to be very upset that I'm just trying to manipulate them in general, regardless of what I'm trying to get out of it, right? Now, but like I said, this doesn't discount the things that she or these other designers have did, like Balenciaga, Hugo Boss. Like, think about it. Let's look at the positives. Nazis and, the whole World War II shit and just Germany in the time of this, it was terrible. We can all agree that shit was terrible, but they was pretty aesthetic, right? They was pretty fashionable. Me personally, okay, let's not take this the wrong way, okay, because this could be a slippery fucking slope, okay? This is a very slippery slope, and if I say something wrong, I'm gonna be fucking crucified. I know this, okay? But I want to start off by saying World War II and Nazi Germany was terrible. People died. Lots of people died. Absolutely awful. But they were fashionable. They had French designers that are now, to this day, considered to be top tier, on the top of fashion forever. They had those designers design their uniforms for them. And the whole army they were fashionable. Okay, they were aesthetic. Okay, and this brings me to Kanye West. Kanye. He made Graduation, right? He sure as fuck did. And we all know why I'm saying this about Kanye, and why I bridged it between the Nazis and shit. He has said a bunch of neo-Nazi shit, and that I may not agree with. I do not agree with that. Let me clear this up. I do not agree with that. But he's a very good fashion designer. Okay, and there still are people out here to this day that be rocking Yeezys. I'm rocking Yeezys right now. These right here are the Yeezy Pods. Excuse my legs. If you can't see it, I got the Yeezy Pods on. I love these shoes. I wear these shoes all the fucking time. They're sock shoes. This is a very, I think that this, sock shoes in general, but the way that Kanye did it, phenomenal. Bro is a phenomenal fashion designer. Bro has made terrible comments. He has specifically stated that he hates Jews. On Alex Jones. This one instance that I'm referring to, and it's not just this instance, it's been a bunch of different instances where he's been going on a bunch of different rants. Bro has mental issues, may or may not have mental issues, and I disagree with a lot of the things that he says, okay? But that does not disqualify his music. from being good music. He is one of the most Grammy award-winning artists of all time. Kanye West, the guy that makes terrible comments about Jewish people. Let's break down some of his catalog for you real quick. The College Dropout, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, 808s and Heartbreaks. But bro, he made Graduation, right? We don't know Graduation. Y'all don't know Graduation. Y'all don't be bumping Graduation, right? Just because bro said all that crazy dumb shit does not mean that he did not make good music, right? Can we agree to that? Is that okay to say? Is bro still not a great fashion designer, a great shoe designer? Y'all still be rocking those Yeezys. Y'all will still give y'all's left nut for the Yeezy 350 Boost. Some of y'all, to this day, I wouldn't, but some of y'all will. And he said some fucked up shit. So, that's why you should separate the art from the artist. Because the art that these people are making does not mean that they are good or bad people. It means that the art that they are making can also be celebrated. And this also brings me back to the point of World War II. Once again, the person that was controlling, I'm not even going to say his name, the person that was controlling Germany in this time, the leader of Germany and the Nazi Party, the creator of the Nazi Party, was a phenomenal artist. Now, that might get me canceled, right? And I'm not saying he was a good guy under any circumstance at all. And some of y'all are going to choose not to listen to that last fucking part, which is really going to piss me off. But if you seen the art that he created, the paintings that he made, like literally, he was literally a painter. He wasn't accepted into art school. He was an Austrian painter. And if you seen his paintings in a museum and it didn't say his name beside of it, you would look at that art and you would be like, wow, that's actually very good. He was an amazing painter, phenomenal painter. He still did some fucked up shit. He still did some bad shit. The art that he made doesn't disqualify, and it can go the other way around. The art that he made does not disqualify the things and the bad things that he had did. And this goes back to the point of getting the good things out of bad situations and looking at it as optimism. Don't be pessimistic. Don't do that. You can look at the good things that came out of the bad situations. There was a bunch of different inventions and a bunch of different modern day technology and modern day science that came out of Nazi Germany. And in America, if there was no World War II, we wouldn't have the Industrial Revolution. There wouldn't be as many women's rights nowadays. I mean, fucking come on, bro. Let's look at the good shit that came out of the bad times. And I think that it's very terrible that people attempt to cancel other people just because they say shit like this. They say shit like there's good things that came out of World War II and Nazi Germany, because there is. And people are going to sit here and shun me because I said something like that. That's bullshit. I think that's bullshit. That's exactly what that is. You can always look and see that there's good things that come out of bad situations. There's plenty of people that I know that went through terrible shit, that went and was abused throughout their whole fucking childhood. And they had terrible things done to them throughout their whole life. But they learned from it in various sorts of ways. They can now see who the fuck is a bad person. And then they can weed those people out throughout their life. Whenever they're trying to make a decision about a relationship, they're going to have early warning signs. Oh, this person did the same thing that the person that abused me did. Very early on, they're going to notice that, and they're going to be like, okay, I can't fuck with this person anymore. You learn from shit like that. There's good things that come out of bad times. There's a bunch of people that I know that went through bad times that had gained something good out of it. Stop being pessimistic and stop saying that there's not good things that can come out of bad times. There is bad and shitty things that happen in this world. 100%. We can all agree to that. And then people are going to sit here and say, how can you think like that? How can you think that there was good things that happened during this such terrible time? It's all terrible. Why the fuck do you think that everything is all terrible? Why the fuck are you so pessimistic? I mean, come on. This really gets me heated. This gets me heated. It really does, because I'm very passionate about this. That's why there's a whole goddamn podcast episode about this. All right. I'm going to calm down a little bit. Let's get on to Elvis Presley. Right. The king of rock and roll. He was 500 million records worldwide. Making him one of the best-selling artists ever. He revolutionized pop culture as it is today. Elvis married Priscilla Presley when she was 14. I'm still going to be bumping, "It's a hunga burning love. Yeah, it's a hunga burning love." You know what I mean? Just because he married that bitch at 14 does not fucking mean that he wasn't a good artist. Now, just because he was a good artist does not mean, or does it disqualify the morality of the things that he has done. He was also a drug addict. He also overdosed. Elvis Presley, everybody. Michael Jackson, same way. Same thing, right? And Elvis Presley, let's go back to Elvis Presley. Cultural appropriation. I personally don't agree with cultural appropriation, especially in America, because America is a mixture of a bunch of different cultures. That's what America is. America was built off of a bunch of different cultures, right? People make the argument of this country is built off of immigrants. It was. Which means there's a bunch of different fucking cultures coming into this country at one time. And that means that the culture now is a mixture of a whole lot of different cultures. How the fuck is there appropriation from that? We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into politics. And I don't agree with identity politics. I don't get into that shit either. But we'll move on to Michael Jackson, right? King of pop. Over 350 million records sold worldwide. He made Thriller. He made A Billie Jean Is Not My Lover. Ow, she just a girl. Yeah. Billie Jean. You know Billie Jean. We still bumping Michael Jackson to this day. We still going to be bumping Michael Jackson in those thrift stores. Right? We still going to be listening to Michael Jackson. Just beat it. Just beat it. Come on, bro. Separate the art from the artist. Bro had, he faced multiple child sexual abuse allegations, which remain debated and controversial to this day. And bro has been dead for a while now. He's been dead for over a decade. There was a bunch of pedo allegations. I don't think that those are true. Even the kids from back in the day, he made the argument of, he didn't have a childhood, which he didn't. Bro was just thrown out there onto a stage whenever he was a little ass kid, and then he was told to just do it, and then he became a mogul, and He let fame control his life. He was also on drugs of some sort. I think that they were prescribed. I don't know if he was like a massive drug addict, like, you know, these some of these other artists. Or Kurt Cobain, Nirvana. I mean, come on, bro. Nirvana was amazing. I would have loved to see Nirvana in concert, but now we can't because Kurt Cobain, he was a heroin addict. Bro offed himself. He offed himself. No, I don't have a gun. He's the one that sung that. He sure as fuck did have a gun. He did. And he used it. That is not good. That is not a good example for the people that he was putting his music out to. I don't agree with self-deletion at all. And you know, life gets tough for some people, and some people look at that as an option. I don't think that is an option. I do not consider that an option. He could have got over it. I think that he had heroin in his system at the time that he did it. He could have just came down off of the high later on and then just realized that was really fucked up. And maybe he could have got sober after that, but instead he made the decision to get rid of himself. And I don't think that was a good decision, especially with all the influence that he had. Right? All jokes aside, you know, I joke about that. I joke about just anything, really. And, you know, that's one of my problems. I talk about that. That's one of my problems, that I joke about everything. But self-deletion is a big problem, all jokes aside. And I don't think that should be looked at as an option. And if we look at the world as more optimistic and get the good out of life instead of looking at all the bad out of the life, then you could possibly have a good life. There's ways to turn your life around that could be positive for you and for other people. But instead, people choose the coward way out. And I hate to say that. I do. I really hate to say that. I mean, it sounds like a terrible thing that I'm saying, but it's not really. The truth hurts. It is a cowardice way because it's too much for you, but you're not taking into consideration other people that care about you. You know, you have a bunch of weight on you at a time, and you have a bunch of negative thoughts on you at this time, and all this negative stuff that is flowing through your body. If you get rid of yourself, it doesn't get rid of all of the negative that has been put onto you. Whenever you get rid of yourself, it puts that negative stuff on other people. Right? The people that care about you, that you don't think that care about you. But once you do that, it puts all the negativity on other people, and then they have to deal with that. And I think that that's a selfish thing to do. And I apologize beforehand for anybody that gets upset at me saying that, but I stand on that. And I think that's a big belief of mine. And this is, you know, a reason for talking about this is because people go through a bunch of fucked up shit in their life. But there's things that you can do. You can try to inspire other people. You can try to, you know, look at the positives in life. If everybody did that, life would be better for everybody, not just you. It would definitely be better for you if you look at just the positives in life and prepare for the negatives. But people don't do this. So, you know, we get fucked up shit. The world's even more fucked up now because you don't do this. Michael Jackson, yeah, we went through all that shit. You know, like I was saying, there was a bunch of kids that you know, came to his house and whatnot. They grew older, and then they got interviews about what happened at the thing. They said that there was nothing bad that happened there. And, you know, this is loose information. This is very loose information because, you know, there was a bunch of allegations. I mean, why was a grown-ass man hanging out with a bunch of kids? Like I said, his excuse was that he didn't have a childhood, and which he didn't. Really, he didn't have a good childhood and didn't get to experience childhood like a normal kid would. So he got into a position where he was able to have that experience again, and then he recreated it, and he was able to show other kids a good experience as well, and show them that being a child is fun, and you don't have to worry about shit. Children don't have responsibilities and shit like that, and they should be able to be free. And I think that's what he was getting at. That was what he said his mission was. Don't know if it's completely true or not. We don't know. Like I said, we know very minimal about, like I said in the very beginning, we know very minimal about these people, only what the news sheds light to. Like, we don't know these people personally and their other struggles, what they struggle with. But at the same time, you can look at things in a different way. And I think that like art in itself, once art is created, I think that it somewhat takes a life of its own into its own hands. Like, once I create a painting, that's out of my hands. The painting is somewhat of a separate life of its own. So whenever people view it, and I'm not there to explain it. Sometimes I don't even explain my art to people, because if it's in a museum, I'm not going to be there to explain to those people what my art is. And a lot of these artists, especially if they're passed away now, they're not able to explain their art either. So you just have what you have. You just have the music. You just have the paintings. You just have, the creations that these people have made. And this isn't just exclusive. Like I said before, like, this isn't just exclusive to only visual artists or audio artists, I guess. This is like actors. And like I said, politicians, politics is somewhat of an art. Actors too, I didn't have any actors on this list, but there's honorable mentions here. We have there's miscellaneous influential people, podcasters. I'm a podcaster. Joe Rogan, he has a bunch of controversial things that he says, conspiracies and shit like that. And he said a bunch of shit that people don't agree with. Right? And he's going to say that. As a podcaster, you're going to say that. I've already came to the conclusion that I'm going to say some shit that people don't agree with. And, podcasting itself is an art of its own, Having conversations with people is an art in its own. And what you believe, and what you say may not be a direct reflection of the kind of person that you are, and how you react, how you interact with people, and how you treat people, and deep down inside, like, what you mean is not a direct reflection of how you represent yourself sometimes. Some people represent themselves in somewhat, I understand, especially with Wholehearted Entertainment, I may represent myself in some sort of way that could possibly be controversial. I definitely understand that. And I also understand that how people view me is not always aligned with what kind of person I am. Right? Like I said, I try my best to be the best person that I can possibly be. And my art is not a direct reflection of the kind of person that I am. It's not. The type of art that I enjoy does not reflect my values and my morale as a person. It doesn't. And I could be listening to Satanist screamo music. I'm not a fucking Satanist, but I can still enjoy the art of it and the skill that it took in order to create what I'm listening to. Like, that takes skill to scream at the top of your fucking lungs and it still be musical. Like, still be musically correct to an extent. It takes skill and art to create those drums. To be able to play a fucking guitar the way that they do. It's phenomenal how they do it. And it's inspirational, really, because if a person's able to do those things at peak level, it's inspirational whenever you see that, because you're like, damn, another human did that. I could do something like that as well, right? So you should separate the art from the artist. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. You know, art and artists, you know, I think that we should recognize that art and artists aren't always the same thing. It isn't. Like, they aren't. Like, look at Suicide Boys. Suicide Boys are now deep Christians that still perform the music that they made whenever they was straight atheist and straight like Satanist type shit. Like, they used to burn crosses at their fucking concerts before they turned Christian, and now they're heavy big time Christians. And you know, you never know, maybe in the future, maybe 10 years in the future, they may become Satanists. Who fucking knows? Like, you know, people are complicated. People are very complicated. But, you know, I think that you know, we can still appreciate the universal impact of creativity in general. I think that's what we can do, even if the human behind it was imperfect, because, you know, every human is imperfect. So, with that being said, I think that we can wrap this motherfucking shit up. Nobody's perfect at all. Be positive. Stop being pessimistic. Always look at the good and shit. You heard? Alright, bruh. I'm gone. Peace.